Okay, so circumference and arc length. Let me zoom in here. So is a circle necessarily a three-dimensional figure? No. So this is called three-dimensional figures because we're going to get to three-dimensional figures. What would you think the three-dimensional figure of a circle is? A sphere. Yep. A cylinder does have, yes, circular top and bottom, right? And then what would, if you were to cut open a cylinder, what's the middle part? What? Yep, it's a wrapped rectangle. Okay, so circumference is the what around the circle? Anybody know? Perimeter. What's perimeter? Length or distance. Mm-hmm. Pi is the ratio between the circle's blank and its blank. Anybody know? Uh-huh. Have you guys worked with pi before, right? Did you guys ever do that like Oreo thing where you measured around the Oreo and measured across the Oreo? Or with Chips Ahoy? If you do that, if you measure around the Oreo and then measure across the Oreo, they're always going to, and then put it as a ratio or a fraction, it's always going to reduce down to pi, which is what? What's the number for pi? Mm-hmm. And we're just going to use 3.14 as the truncated decimal for that. So what that means is that the circumference is about 3 and a little bit more times as big as the diameter is essentially what that means. Okay. Circumference formula, there are two formulas that we can use. What's one of them? 2 pi r. What's r stand for? Radius. Radius starts in the center of the circle and goes to anywhere on the outside of the circle. And what's the second one? Yep. Because diameter is actually 2 radii, right? So if I take a radius and then put a second radius, that's going to equal diameter. Diameter is all the way across the circle through the center. Radius starts at the center and goes halfway. Or goes to the side, which is half the distance of the diameter. Go ahead and try number 1 and number 2 on your own real quick. The first one says to approximate the circumference. The second one says to calculate the exact. Those are two different methods that we're going to use to calculate the circumference. When it says approximate, they're expecting that you're going to get a decimal answer, and they will typically tell you how to round it. In this case, they told you the nearest hundredth. What do I type into my calculator in order to solve this guy? 2 times pi times 10. And you're just going to use the pi button, right? So 2 times pi times 10. Rounded to the nearest hundredth, that would be what? 62 point what? And that is centimeters. Make sure you're using the pi button if you have the capability, okay? That'll get you a little more exact of an answer. Now, number 2, it says calculate the exact circumference. Well, when we use pi, it's a truncated part of the decimal, right? So you're not getting the exact answer because we are rounding it, okay? If they want an exact answer, what they're wanting you to do is leave the pi symbol in the equation, not actually multiply by pi. So if I say calculate the exact circumference of a circle with a radius of 10, I would do 2 times pi times 10 again. What's 2 times 10? So this answer would actually just be 20 pi, and that's how they're wanting you to leave it, with pi actually in the answer, and that's centimeters. That is a more exact answer. Even though we don't know what that exact number is, it's a more exact answer because we're not rounding anything. Number 3, given a circle in which C, capital C, what do you think capital C stands for? Okay, so the circumference we now know is 320 pi. Calculate the length of the diameter and the radius. Well, if I want to do diameter first, remember that diameter times pi equals circumference, right? So diameter times pi equals this 320 pi. I want to get diameter. So what would I do to start getting diameter by itself? Divide by pi. So what I do to one side, do to the other, it actually just cancels out on both sides. And I'm left with diameter equals how much? 320. But they also want radius. How would I get radius from that? Awesome. So 320 divided by 2 is how much? 160. Any questions on that? All right, next page. Okay, so now we're going to talk about arc length. So when we have a circle, we have the circumference, right? We have the whole circumference, which is all the way around. Arc length is a piece of the circumference. It is a piece of the circumference. Okay? It is a portion or a piece of the circle circumference. Okay? To find the arc length, okay, what you are going to do is you are going to find the circumference of the whole thing, so 2 pi r, but then you're going to multiply it by a degree out of 360. Why are we doing it out of 360? Circle's 360 degrees. Okay, there's a couple ways to find this. So let's say that this circle said it was 75 degrees and it had a radius of 5. Okay? First off, let's find the circumference of this circle. How would I find the circumference of this circle? 2 times pi times 5. Go ahead and give me a rounded answer to the nearest tenth on that. 31 point what? Okay. So what they're saying is all the way around the circle is 31.4. So that's all the way around the circle. That's the whole circumference. But I just want this piece of the pie right here. I want to know the distance of that guy. Okay. If they give you an angle that hits at the center point, this angle measure is 75 degrees. This is taking up 75 degrees of the whole circle, okay? So I would take my whole circumference that we got here, right, 31.4, and then I'd multiply it by what? Think about the formula right above it. How many degrees? What's my x value? 75 out of 360. So we can find that ratio of the whole distance around. So on your calculator, do 31.4 times parentheses 75 divided by 360 in parentheses. 6.54, so 6.5. Which should make sense, because 75 goes into it. 75, 150, 225, 300, 375 is a little bit more, so about 5 times, right? 75 degrees would go into that 360 about 5 times. Well, about 5 times 6.5 gets us to this whole circumference. So that should make sense as an answer, right? So, thing to note, if they're showing you an angle that meets at the center of the circle, and they tell you the number of degrees, that's the number of degrees on here. However, if they have an inscribed angle like this guy, they're saying that this angle is 40 degrees. You have to multiply that by 2 to get the arc length measure. So what would the arc length measure be? So this is 80 degrees. Okay? Now, something to note. Do you see over here? This is how we talk about arc A to B. When they talk about that arc A to B, they're talking about A to B, this arc length. So they're wanting us to find that arc length. Tell me again how I would do that. What would I say? Yep, we're going to say that the radius is equal to 7. So, what are we going to say here? I'm making that up. Sorry. How long is the radius? I meant, how do I find circumference? 2 times pi times 7, right? But then I'm going to multiply that by what? 80 divided by 360. What do I get? Yep, good. 9.8. Okay. Look at this next one. It says arc A to C to B. Okay. They are actually wanting you to follow the letters. They want you to start at A and go up to C and up to B. They're wanting that orange arc. Okay? Two ways I could do this. What is one way? Yep, 2 times pi times 7. And then, where'd you get 280? Yep, the whole way around, 360 minus the 80 that we have. Okay? Go ahead and put that into your calculator real quick. What do you get? I got 34.2. You guys agree or disagree? Okay. The second way you could have done this, guys, is you could have just found 2 times pi times 7, and it's 43.9. That's the whole circumference, right? But then couldn't I have just subtracted off the brown piece that we found already of the whole circumference to find this guy? That would have been the second way that you could have found that. Okay? Your homework is the following. You need to complete question number 5 on your own. And you need to do that Unit 8 ACT, finish that if you haven't finished that. Okay, and that's all. Any questions for me? All right, hopefully that made some sense. Was that okay, guys?